Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Tuesday, the 16th of September, 2025, which makes this the news and events for Monday, September 15th, 2025, day 1300 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and I'm coming to you live from this major European capital currently under siege, but not currently under air alert, which is nice. I see the peeps are coming in. Hey, Roy Daniels. Hey, Anthony Tommy Tom. There's Derek Sands, Nicola Jones, Steve-O. How you living? Hey, Eli, Di, Mike Now. Hey, G2. Hey, Pugga Mahone. How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Grotland. Hey, Paul. Paul's one of the sponsors this week. Hey, Sarah, Little Red. So is Derek Sands. We're doing very well. We've got sponsors right through Thursday. Hey, Debbie. If anybody wants to pick up Friday, hit me up. Enjoy the silence as long as it lasts. Well, it's not going to last much longer, Arna. I can tell you that right now, pal. Because, hey, Paul. Hey, Tina. Because Keith Kellogg left today. So it's funny, Keith Kellogg, General Keith Kellogg, who is a friend of Ukraine's, is also Trump's special envoy to Ukraine. And he was in town this weekend. And Zelensky said that he was better than a Patriot air defense battery. That when he was in town, now it might have had something to do with Prince Harry was in town as well. And so Russia's been taking it easy, right? Like last night we saw 87 drones come into the country, 59 of them shot down, about a 70% interception rate. And it's been like that for a few days now. But that is definitely going to come to an end now that Kellogg is gone. He actually, hey, Mike Connors in Ireland. How you doing, pal? Zelensky actually said that they would be happy to offer him citizenship and housing if he would just stay and help. Just like Putin used Xi as his air defense shield at the May 9th Victory Day parade. So, too, when Keith Kellogg is in town, Putin doesn't want him telling stories to Trump, so we don't get hit badly. Hey, Seawolf. Nutmegger will also be a sponsor of Alive this week, but tonight it is Christian H. I'm not sure how to pronounce Christian's last name, and I don't think I've ever seen him in Alive, but he is a Patreon supporter and a supporter of this channel, and so if anybody knows Christian, please thank him for us. The Sofia trip is next week. I'll be in Sofia, and the live will come to you from Sofia next week, which is the same time zone as Kyiv, so the time won't change. But next Tuesday through Friday, we'll be streaming from Sofia, Bulgaria. And thanks everybody who made that possible. Hey, Chrissy Locks. Now, in my mind, the big story today from over the weekend is the Romanian drone, the Russian drone in Romanian airspace. But I'm going to hold off on that. We're going to touch on the news and do a Frontline update, and then we're going to come to that big story, because I do think that is a big story. We saw another Starlink outage over the weekend. At local time, 7:28 a.m., Robert Magyar of Magyar's Birds, the famous drone battalion group, posted that Starlink was out across the front. Now, this is the kind of thing that costs Ukrainians lives because they depend on Starlink for their communications. So you're in the middle of an operation with guys in the field who are counting on the reconnaissance from the drones in the air above you to tell you where the enemy is. and your line of communication to them fails. Now, this was not localized to Ukraine, this Starlink outage. This was worldwide, with 50,000 complaints coming in the U.S. alone. This was the second outage of this season. There was one in July 24th. That one was 2.5 hours. Thank God this was much shorter. We got reports of restored service coming in at 8:02 a.m. local time. So just about 34 minutes. Still, let's be clear on this. Elon Musk has a checkered history when it comes to Starlink service in Ukraine. First, he wanted to play the hero. Oh, please take Starlink on, it's on me. And then the war keeps going on. Oh, I can't afford to keep giving that away. Somebody's got to pay for it. And he starts squeezing $400 million a year out of the U.S. Department of Defense. Trump comes in and all that spending stops, boy. So the Poles picked up the tab for Starlink, and they've been paying for it. Starlink is vital to the communications on the front line for the Ukrainians. I was hoping that the Ukrainians had a substitute. At one point, the former defense minister, Umarov, said that they had a substitute, but it has never materialized. We don't have any reports that this outage cost Ukrainian lives, but there have been outages engineered by Musk that did. It is important to remember that on 2 separate occasions, when Ukraine was in the middle of critical attacks on Sevastopol, Musk shut it off, costing Ukrainian lives. There is blood on his hands. And he shut it off because Putin threatened him with World War III. And he is weak, cowardly, and stupid enough to have believed him. Outrageous. And that was not the only time, right? There was the outage in July, and then there was one more outage under mysterious circumstances that have never been explained. In the United States, now some of you may be watching this happening in Congress right now. In the United States, these idiots can't agree on a budget because one side of the House is trying to destroy every act of Congress since 1944. And gut the system, impoverishing Americans, leading to American deaths. So they can't get a budget. So what are they doing? They're trying to keep the government open with a continuing resolution. Well, for 6 months now, Donald Trump has held up the Russian sanctions bill, despite the fact that after Lindsey Graham and Senator Fitzpatrick introduced it, it got another 80 co-signers. It is the most popular piece of legislation in the last 40 years. They've tried to forcibly attach it to the budget continuing resolution. So if they don't want to shut down the government, they have to pass the Russia sanctions bill. Now, it's my opinion, and I think I saw somebody mention it there, that the maggots want the government shut down. They want it shut down. They want to create as much social tension in America as they can so that they can call out their jackbooted thugs onto the streets of America and start a war so that Donald Trump can declare himself president for life and invoke martial law. That's the kind of thinking that the current White House has. The people of the United States are their enemy, and they are going to bring them to bear. So far, TK's dad, it is failing. So far, thank God. Now, it's interesting to me, right? Like, so some actual Americans that are in Congress who aren't completely beholden to Tangerine Palpatine, they're trying to push through these sanctions on Russia. Russia, the one country in the world that doesn't even have the basic 10% tariff that Trump put on everybody. Somehow Russia is exempt from the most basic policy nightmares of the Trump administration. It's the first time that this Congress has shown any balls in the face of Trump and his nonsense. And I hope they push it through. He will have to sign it. If they have enough votes that they can override his veto, there's no way he won't sign it, because he will not dare risk the Congress voting against him and overriding a veto. 80 senators co-signed that bill. They can override a veto. That's for sure. Now, curiously, First, the Polish military arrived in Kyiv, or will arrive in Kyiv on the 18th, to coordinate countering Russian propaganda and strengthen joint air defense following the drone incursion into Poland, right? Meanwhile, U.S. military observers, as you would expect them to be, showed up at our dear and close friend and ally Belarus to watch the Zapad exercises between Russia and Belarus in Belarus. This is unbelievable to me. First of all, the Russians inviting American... Ima Noctilen says, don't forget today Moldova had drones. If that is true, I don't know anything about it. We are totally in the upside down. Totally in the upside down. The idea that the Russians invited us to the military exercises they call the West, because the exercise is supposed to be them defending against a NATO invasion. Because the defensive alliance, NATO, is always invading someplace. It's outrageous. So I would like to know who is there exactly, which one of Pete Hegseth's personal entourage has gone there in order to communicate messages from Vladimir Putin through Lukashenko to Trump, because that's what's really going on. You can be sure of that. Trump is desperate for new marching orders. Now, the U.S. troops are there as observers. They're not troops, Maddie. They're military observers. It is very strange to see them at a Russian exercise with Belarus, that's for sure. In the meantime, the Ukrainian franchise of Just Stop Oil was certainly busy this weekend. Now, the first thing, we saw Ukrainian partisans derail 2 trains inside of Russia. One was up near St. Petersburg. It was a fuel train. All 15 cars were in the ditch. But unfortunately, we did not get a fire. It doesn't look like they were destroyed. But certainly it caused a lot of delays. Railroad workers on the Oriel-Kursk line spotted some landmines, tank mines, secured to the track in order to derail a train. So what happened was they called in 3 members of the Russian National Guard, sappers, right, to demine the track. Unfortunately, the demining operation did not go, and all 3 of the Russian sappers were killed. So the track was destroyed, and there were further delays on that line as well. So this is Ukrainians striking Russian logistics deep inside Russia. Think of the partisans. Think of the people who are living inside Russia, performing these sabotage activities, risking their lives every single day. It's astonishing, these guys. Now, in terms of oil refineries, we had 2. The Karishi refinery which is the second largest refinery in all of Russia. It processes 20 million tons of oil a year and is responsible, one mega refinery, responsible for 7% of all of the refining capacity inside of Russia. One of the vacuum distillation units was hit, but they've got 3 of them there. And this is all the way up 800 kilometers, about 500 miles from the Ukrainian border. The second refinery hit was the Ufa, the Bashneft refinery out in Ufa, which is all the fucked away out in Bashkortostan. 1,400 kilometers, 870 miles from Ukraine, and a decisive hit on the vacuum distillation unit there. Now, I want to highlight, guys, we have all this talk about all the damage that's being done to the Russian refineries. And don't get me wrong, it's real damage. But these drones that the Ukrainians use do not pack much of a punch. And I was listening to some oil industry experts today talk about the fact that they believe that all of the refinery damage caused in the last 60 days will mostly be repaired in the next 2 weeks. So we can't see these as wins now, or any kind of permanent situation. The situation is very fluid. Even the Russian newspapers are saying that the gas shortage will be alleviated by the end of September. And if these industry projections of repairs are correct, then that's right on track, right? So, hey, Maria Holm, how you doing? So it's important to remember that Ukraine has to keep striking them in order to keep production down. And what I am hoping, this is my fondest hope right now. We got all these refineries that have been hit, that have reduced capacity or are offline. Let the Russians fix them. Let them fix them all. Give them the 2 weeks. Fix them all. And then use these 2 weeks to build a bunch of long-range missiles with 1,000-pound warheads or 1,000-kilogram warheads like the Flamingo. And then send those waves of missiles to using all the telemetry garnered by the drone hits. Use that all, program the missiles, send the missiles, and hit them hard so that these repairs can't be completed in 30 or 45 days like we're seeing right now. That is my fondest hope. It's worth mentioning that Friday's attack on the Primorsk oil terminal way up there by past St. Petersburg, that's Russia's largest export terminal. The pumping station there puts 1 million barrels of crude into ships that sell it all over the world, right? A day. 1 million barrels a day they can pump out. Initial reports on Friday said that the pumping station had been hit, which it had been. And if they had managed to hit it hard enough to shut it down, which they didn't, it's running again. It would have cost the Russians $41 million a day. Hitting that pumping station again and shutting it down is perhaps, it's a concern, right? Because it will drive up oil prices on the open market. But oil prices are threatening to crash. That will put tens of thousands of Americans out of business. If oil goes to $52 a barrel, which is what a number of analysts are suggesting now, that by December it will go to 52 to 59 dollars a barrel, we will see the American shale oil and gas industry bankrupt. Ukraine could do us a big favor and take those 5 million barrels a day that the Russians are selling and blow it the fuck up. You know, there has been this history of Ukraine going after the means of production, hitting logistics, hitting oil refineries, right? Why not just shut down the export? Shutting down the export. The thing about that is you also shut down the production. Here's why. Because Russia has no storage. If they can't put that oil on the ships, they have to cut production. That means capping wells. And when wells are capped, it's not like just turning off a tap, right? It's a process. And it's a very expensive process. And you don't get them back. You often have to re-drill them to get them back into production. I say hit the export. Hit it hard. You'll only be doing American oil and gas a favor. So we thought that only one ship burned in the harbor last Friday. It turns out at least two did. They are identified as the Kyiv and the Cousteau, both of which are sanctioned vessels of the Shadow Fleet. There may have been another ship as well. The local governor said that there was no risk of an oil spill, but guess what you can fucking see as clear as day on the satellite images that came out today? Two large oil slicks, one associated with the Kyiv and one associated with the Cousteau. Oh. Now, just north of that refinery out in Bashkortostan, a chemical plant, Metafrax, which is almost 2,000 kilometers from Ukraine, 1,800 kilometers, 1,120 miles, all the way out in Perm, largest producer of methanol in all of Russia. This was hit with drones. They also make critical precursor chemicals for the military and industrial complex. Here's Ukraine targeting the means of production once again. We saw an ammo cache in the rear in Donetsk go up, as well as one of those $5 million Orion spy and combat drones, right? So we talked about the fact that the Orion manufacturing plant outside of Moscow was hit by drones, I'd say probably 7 or 8 weeks ago, I think, is what I want to say. Probably about 2 months ago, if I'm right. But anyway, the Orion plant was hit a little while back. That plant makes these high-end reconnaissance drones equipped with these high-pixel cameras that can fly at high altitudes and avoid detection and interception. Well, not anymore, apparently. The 414th Separate UAV Recon and Strike Battalion, also known as the Birds of Magyar, unleashed an anti-drone drone and released video of it destroying this $5 million spy drone of the Russian Federation. These are extremely rare. I can't think of another one having been destroyed in this war. I don't know the answer to that. Rare and valuable. We also saw hits over the weekend on Crimea, in Fedosia, and on the Northwest Cape. Unknown targets at this time. But NASA firms data shows fires in both of those locations. Certainly on the Northwest Cape of Crimea, we know what's always there that the Ukrainians are always destroying. Air defense and radars. Always. And electronic warfare, right? So it's likely that the target on the Northwest Cape was air defense, radars, or electronic warfare emplacements. We're just not sure. In Zaporizhia, the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Armed Forces took out another Buk M3. So that's a $10 million air defense system, the workhorse of the mid-range air defense systems of the Russian Federation. The Sumy incursion has lost all unit cohesion. The entire western flank of the incursion has collapsed, right? It's not cracking, it's not collapsing. It is collapsed. The Ukrainians have pushed the Russians on the western flank of the incursion all the way back into Kursk, Russia. And we're getting other reports, certainly that northeast encirclement of Pokrovsk, that's collapsed. Right now, the Ukrainians are in there just cleaning the cauldron out. There's thousands of Russians trapped in those pockets and completely surrounded by the Ukrainians. So we're seeing now two areas of the front where the Russian lines are in a state of virtual collapse. There were two villages liberated in that Sumy incursion, along with unconfirmed reports of Ukrainian armed forces 225th Separate Assault Battalion now taking positions inside of Russia again. Now, those reports of the Ukrainians taking Russian ground in Kursk are unconfirmed, but we believe the 225th Separate Assault Battalion likely is currently in Kursk and taking Russian positions. We just talked about the Dobropilla sector, right? The Ukrainian armed forces having attacked the larger salient northeast of Pokrovsk and severed the salient from the main body of Russian troops. It's cauldron clearing time. There are 3 large pockets of Russian troops encircled in that region, and they are currently making their final decisions. In Tolstoy, the town of Filia is confirmed liberated by units of the 425th Skala Regiment. So it's a smaller gain than in the other 2 locations. But down closer to Zaporizhia, Ukraine is moving forward as well. This is part of the expulsion of the Russian troops from Dnipropetrovsk. Now, in my mind, in light of the incursions into Poland and the press conference on Friday, where we saw Mark Rutte, Secretary General of NATO, and the current Supreme Allied Commander of European Forces, tell us that Operation Eastern Flank or Eastern Sentry is a go, and it's in position, and that this would provide ongoing air defense against Ukrainian drone incursions all along the eastern flank of NATO. Now, I will tell you, you know Dominic Nichols from Ukraine the Latest, the podcast? He doesn't think we should call it NATO's eastern flank. He thinks we should call it the front line. And that, to me, certainly kind of focuses the mind on what's really happening here. So at any rate, NATO's eastern flank, we were told, was now secure, that a drone curtain had been drawn across the eastern flank. And yet on Saturday, Russia, still testing NATO boundaries, flew a drone into Romanian airspace, NATO airspace, EU airspace. Romanian F-16s escorted that Russian Shahed for 50 minutes, nearly an hour, until the UAV turned its course and headed into Ukraine. Now Moscow knows that it can use Romanian airspace anytime it wants to launch attacks on Ukraine from the west with impunity. That is the message that was sent on Saturday. It was an unmitigated disaster, a telegraph to Moscow of the weakness of NATO. Moscow now knows that it can use Romanian airspace to murder Romanian airspace to murder Ukrainians, strike civilian infrastructure. And it cements the idea in Russia's mind that NATO is weak and will not. It should have been blown out of the sky, Mike. Absolutely, it should have been. Supposedly, NATO Eastern Sentry is in operation. The orders have been issued. That's what the SACOR told us on Friday. Then why wasn't this thing blown out of the sky? This is a dreadful, dreadful failure. Now, Brussels, for its part, is condemning this violation of Romanian airspace. Ursula von der Leyen said that it's a blatant violation of EU sovereignty, a serious threat to regional security, and unacceptable. Kaja Kallas, chief EU diplomat and pinup model, said that it's yet another unacceptable breach of an EU member state's sovereignty. The Romanian foreign minister said it's an unacceptable and reckless. These people keep using this word unacceptable. I don't think they know what this word means. Because clearly it was acceptable. Hell, the Romanians gave the thing an escort out of its territory and did not engage it. If they identified it as being a decoy drone and unarmed, they have not communicated that to the rest of us. And we don't know what the final flight path was or what became of that drone. But if Putin did what he did on Friday, because he was absolutely certain that NATO wouldn't respond, that NATO is weak in the face of aggression, he was certainly right. And this situation in Romania just proves it. Now, somebody else mentioned something about drones in Moldova. I'm not aware of any drones in Moldova, but I'll certainly take a look for tomorrow. Regardless, Putin is testing our resolve, Gibelan, and we are failing. We could not be failing harder. It's a crime and a sin. It's a crime and a sin. Okay, one more thing. I got one more thing here, and then we'll go to questions and answers. The Kyiv Independent, RBC Ukraine, and Interfax Ukraine have all quoted sources inside the main intelligence directorate of the Ukrainian Armed Forces saying that hackers friendly to Ukraine have targeted Russian election voting platforms yesterday during the election inside Russia. The Russian Central Elections Committee confirmed their servers were down, but did not identify a cause. The GUR claimed that they used a DDoS attack focused on the Central Election Committee servers, the Remote Electronic Voting Platform, DEG, and Gasusludzi, the State Digital Servers Portal, right? So it's the place you go for all things Russian state-related. File your taxes, apply for a marriage license, or vote. All of these were targeted according to GUR. GUR went on to say that they had paralyzed the digital services of the Russian Federation, disrupting voting. The primary goal was to disrupt online voting in the temporarily occupied territories where elections for local officials like mayor and governor were taking place in the illegally annexed territories. Everybody checks out sooner or later, Liam. And when Putin shrugs off this mortal coil, you're going to see the Russian Federation degenerate into an orgy of violence the world has rarely seen this century. You in the hospital, Tim? What happened, buddy? You forget to duck? How you doing? You still got all your arms and legs? Are we going to have to call you Eileen from now on? How you doing, bud? Seriously, you okay? Bip, you can't be nice to these guys. Then they think there's something wrong with them. That's what it is. FPVs and mortars. Oh. All right, pal. Well, I hope they're taking care of you there. Thank God. T-bar guy, I think that's already happened. Now I know that makes me crazy. I try not to talk about it because it's real tinfoil hat shit. But honest to God, I think it's already happened. I think it happened a long time ago. I think that's why we can't get anywhere. Because the cabal that's in charge isn't really in charge. They've got a front man who's in charge, and they're just pilfering the treasury for every dime they can get out of that bitch before they leave town. I really think that's what's happening. I'm with Renvox, Timmy boy. Thank you. Thanks for dropping by, Tim. Hit me up, man. Send me a note. Big thanks to Christian, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. Like I said, I've never seen Christian on a live. I don't know if he's in here just not talking. But big thanks to Christian. Big thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces. And, of course, to the moderator team, best moderators on the Tickety Talk. Pat, that's a great question. And that was a question that the young woman from Bloomberg asked the SACOR and the Secretary General in Friday's meeting. Can you keep affording to send $400,000 missiles to take out a $20,000 drone? Or whatever they cost. And the fact is we can't, right? Like nobody can afford that. And so immediately one of the things that happened was that NATO is looking at what the cost-effective solutions are and what they can learn from Ukraine about intercepting these drones. Just a tip, heard about Project Nimbus? No. I have no idea what Project Nimbus is. How feasible is it to fully take out a major oil plant? That's a great question. Because these things, I was looking at pictures of the one in Kurdistan today, right? And that's not even a mega refinery. That's a smaller regional refinery. I want to say 7 million tons of crude oil gets processed through there a year. And it provides fuel oil, diesel, gasoline to the local oblast, to like the 6 regions around there. It's 4.5 kilometers long. Like the territory of the thing is 4.5 kilometers along the long side. It was maybe about 2 kilometers wide. What is that, about 3 miles by about a little over a mile? And that's not even a big refinery in Russia. And so the problem with hitting these refineries with these little drones is that you can only shut them down for so long. There are certain critical components, units, workshops that you can hit that will take these refineries offline. But it's like plug and play, right? I mean, It's a lot of big pipes, a lot of big pieces of metal. And you just swap them out, apparently. Now, I know that's oversimplifying it, right? But if these strikes had long-term damage to them, this war wouldn't still be going on. We've seen over 40 strikes against 21 unique refineries. Russia has 22 mega refineries, right? These refineries like Kyiv. Kyiv's got 3 distillation units in it. It processes 20 million tons of oil a year. They're huge. Now, here's the thing. The critical infrastructure, the vacuum distillation chambers, cracking towers, if you can destroy them so that they can't be repaired, that's a new level. And my fondest wish right now is that during this period, while the drones are peppering the oil refineries, causing the fuel shortages, leading the Russian economy into a downward spiral from which it cannot recover, while the Russians are putting all this effort into repairing the refineries, the Ukrainians are watching. Which refineries are important? You know, that little refinery down in Krasnodar Krai, they only process 3.5 million tons of oil a year. But they're the only ones in the country that make the high-density aviation fuel that you need when half your air fleet is north of the Arctic Circle. Do they rush to repair that? Is that more critical to them with winter coming on? What about the effects of retooling the refineries for the production of winter-grade fuel? There are lots of places inside Russia where if they don't have winter-grade fuel in January, guess what? You're staying home until March, maybe April. And this process of knocking the refineries out, forcing resources into the repair, rather than the seasonal adjustments, the gearing up to produce winter-grade fuels, that alone will cause problems down the road for Russia that are yet to even probably be on many people's radars. But again, my fondest wish is that they're watching what the Russians make a priority to fix. And that should tell them what's a priority to hit again. And this time, not hit it with a drone. This time, send a flock of flamingos with 1,050-kilogram warhead over a ton of TNT equivalent. Now, somebody mentioned earlier, or asked the question earlier, are these flamingos stealthy? They are not in any way stealthy, which I think is why we're seeing in these intervening weeks the focus of the Ukrainians on radars, long-range radars, and electronic warfare assets, I think. Hey, Betty Thompson, how you doing? The Russians will not wait 8 hours for 10 liters of gasoline at minus 20. No, they will not. In fact, there's a lot of people inside Russia grumbling right now. Putin hates a grumble. Trump wants the rest of EU to reject all Russian fuel. Is it to help them cover their own demand now? So we got 2 holdouts. There's 2 countries that are holdouts that keep buying Russian oil. And that's Slovakia and Hungary. They're responsible for purchasing virtually all of the Russian oil still coming into Europe. Now, a lot of countries, Germany, Portugal, Spain, Italy, purchase Netherlands, or no, not the Netherlands, sorry, Belgium, purchase LNG from Russia, liquefied natural gas. And it is incomprehensible to me that that is not sanctioned. Now, all the EU has pledged to get off all Russian fossil fuel by 2030, I think was the final date to be off it all. So everybody's supposed to be looking for a way out. Hello, Catjet. Good evening, Colin. Americans cannot keep up with our own rights being stripped. They are... Yeah, you're not wrong, Texas Blaze. What about 50 caliber machine guns to tackle the Shaheds or even 50 caliber rifles? I don't know, Titch. I haven't seen that as a solution here in Ukraine. Most of the solutions of the mobile air defense forces around Kyiv include things like Gepards, auto guns and chain guns. Often today, I saw the most crazy thing you ever saw. It was a 1934 Maxim, which is a Soviet auto gun or auto cannon. And this thing was hooked up to a thermal imaging camera, so that day or night you could sight drones and then shoot them down with a gun that was over 90 years old. Like, just amazing. The digital adaptations of traditional dogma matched with just the hardcore firepower of a cheap antique gun. I don't know what else to call it. I mean, it was made in 1934. So I'm sure that they're talking about the solutions. And they'll deploy them. The Germans will probably send Gepards. Do you see weapons shortage in the next 12 months? Not for Ukraine. Yes, Trollak, what's your question? You sat through Olga Skankieva, did you? On her 60 Minutes program? No ripoff there. You call it an antique gun. It was made in 1934. What else would you call it? Yeah, designology. You know, necessity is the mother of invention. And the Ukrainians have a lot of necessity right now. And they're doing some very, very interesting things. Very interesting. That's what I've said, right? Like, how many times have I said that? How great it is to be able to sit here and say over and over and over again, for the first time in history ever, we have Trump placing our own military in our streets. I love those following with Star Wars music. Yeah. Kadyrov, where is he? So we haven't seen much of Ramzan Kadyrov lately, the nominal dictator of Chechnya, right? And dear friend of dear leaders. We did see him. He did make an appearance over the weekend to open a new stretch of highway outside of Grozny. And he did not look good. The camera, the state television that was there, was very careful to only show him, I noticed, from the waist up and to not get too close. And when it was time to flip the sign to indicate the road was open, he did not do it alone. Somebody else helped him do it. And I mean, it's just a sign on a swivel. Additionally, when the ceremony was over, he didn't do the usual glad handing to the crowd. He kind of was backed away by some people. So he's clearly unwell. He's clearly unwell and staying out of the limelight. His death will almost certainly spark either a civil war inside of Chechnya or a war with neighboring Dagestan, or a combination, Dagestani forces supporting a rebel takeover in Grozny. That's going to be one of the first places that burns. How long has Putin got left? Nobody knows, Alex. Can you pin I got a question? Well, Trolak, why don't you ask your question, pal? Yeah, no, Kadyrov was never well. You're not wrong about that. That guy is messed up. Well, you know, his father, right, sold out the Chechen people to Putin. That's how Chechnya got in the Russian Federation. The Chechens won the first Chechen war. Then Putin came back for seconds because he had a turncoat inside of Chechnya, Ramzan's dad. So, I mean, these are the worst kind of people in the world. Night, Parta. Hey, Feisty. Can you see Western defense companies move into Ukraine once the war is won to rebuild? Western defense companies are already moving into Ukraine. Rheinmetall has opened a shell manufacturing facility here for the production of NATO standard 155 millimeter shells. Who else has opened places here? The Danes are here. The Dutch are here. It's already happening. No, this country will be the armory of the world when the world turns away from the United States. And the world is turning away from the United States at an increasing rate. Of course he does, Pingu. He's a wannabe dictator. Hope Russian commander to sell fuel on black market, which benefits Ukraine. So there are now dozens and dozens of videos on Telegram of people who bought fuel on the black market and now their cars won't start. Like, it is just a riot to me. I am in Kyiv, Lewis, yes. Kim Jong-Trump. Kim Jong-Trump. Kim Don-un. Kim Don-un is better, I think. We should put out a black carpet for Trump. A black Timu dictator. Nice. We need German beer. And all Russian advances stand still. Yeah, no, Russia's now losing ground. You know, let's be clear. Russia's barely made any ground the last 2 years. I keep saying that for 26 months, Russia's only taken 1% of Ukraine. Except I forgot that time keeps passing. I was looking at it today. Russia had 18% of Ukraine in November of 2022. It will soon be 36 months. And in 36 months, Russia has managed to take 1% of Ukraine. Right? What do they have now? 19.2%. So this whole thing about Russian advances is basically a myth. It's basically Russian propaganda. If the Dutch is there, you might not need the bridge to get into Crimea. They will drain the sea. Yeah, old President Bone Spurs, right, Mike? Ugh. Trump is a coward. He's a complete coward. Of course he is. I mean, only the worst kind of people follow a weak man who wants to punish. What is that about? I don't know. Okay, again, big thanks to our sponsor, Christian. Thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces, and of course, the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk. Thank you all very much. Guys, next week, Tuesday through Friday, we'll be broadcasting from Sofia, Bulgaria. Thanks to everybody who made that trip possible. I am a little nervous. I have the rent for October put away, but I don't really have any spending money for this trip. And I am going to have to eat for 7 days on the road. So if anybody can sponsor a live or sponsor the trip, PayPal is in the description. Any assistance is greatly appreciated. All right, kids. And I will see you all tomorrow. Everybody take care. Thanks.